Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Our current session focuses on lesson planning in language teaching. I hope and expect that in the context of language teaching you would able to understand what is the significance of lesson planning and how does it operate or how does it play its role when it comes to language teaching. Well, my dear students, an efficient working level of teaching is ensured by the systematic and careful planning of a lesson. A lot of things keep on going on to happen in the class on spot. So, everything that would happen in a class during a lesson cannot be controlled. However, I think it's a good idea to be prepared for a lesson than to go into the class without being prepared. And lesson plan is a kind of preparation that a teacher does before going to the classroom. So simply the slogan behind this would be, those who fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So one key to success in the classroom is to prepare well before going to the class, and lesson plan not only facilitates but also it helps you to kind of being comfortable with what you would do in the class, because you can already anticipate and you are ready for that. Main aim of lesson planning is, kind of scientifically tested organizations of educational process and achievement of successful acquisition of language in the classroom. Well, at the beginning of the course, the teacher should predict how to organize the whole process of teaching and learning and to be aware of the results which will have to be achieved at the end of the lesson as well as at the end of the unit and then ultimately at the end of the course. When it comes to the lesson planning for a language teaching classroom, mainly there are two types of plannings that are required. One type of planning is for the whole year academic planning, which would be either for the whole year or for the whole semester and would deal with the whole course of that particular language teaching course. The second aspect or the second level is comparatively a lower level, where daily plan or the lesson plan is to be made for each and every lesson or each and every segment of the lesson. Well, the daily lesson plan often again contains two parts. The first part is an outline of the procedure of the lesson that gives a kind of a description of the activities, the order in which these activities would be carried out, and the predicted timings that the teacher estimates would be utilized in carrying out a particular activity. The second part of the lesson plan is about the major information, the background information. For example, what are the aims or what are the objectives of that lesson that are operating behind that planning of the lesson, what is the target language, what kind of materials are being used, are going to be applied in the classroom, and what are the problems that the teacher predicts in this regard. Well, different scholars, researchers and teachers, they have suggested giving different kinds of lesson plans, but mainly most of them stick to the idea that the lesson plan should be simple, it should be easy to read, because then in that case it would have a kind of a clarity in it, this simplicity would help it being more systematic, and thirdly, this would help in following it in a very, very easy way when it comes to the practical, application of that lesson plan in the classroom. Prose descriptions should be cut out. There is no need to describe the whole script of the lesson in the lesson plan. So lesson plan is more like an outline for what is going to be dealt with in the classroom. It does not mean copying the whole text of the lesson. However, a model sentence or a set of complicated structures or instructions or some important questions or some important phrases or some chunks of language that the teacher thinks are important, or the questions even that the teacher plans to ask the students to stimulate them to think about something or to respond to something, etc. These are the things that can be made a part of the lesson plan. Well, as far as the general areas that are considered to be important are the learners. It is necessary to take into account the interests, the motivation, attitudes and abilities of the learners. Will they enjoy doing the lesson? Will they benefit from it? These are two important aspects with reference to the learners. The second important aspect is aims and objectives. If the teacher is clear about what is the purpose of teaching a lesson, what is the aim, and what is the, the concrete breakdown of the objectives of this lesson, that makes the life of the teacher easy, and that makes the use of, various materials in the classroom easy as well. The main aim or the main objective might include the teaching and learning of various skills or various sub-skills with reference to a specific language that is to be taught to the students in the classroom. The purpose can be the objectives can be the development of, for example, comprehensions of the students in that particular reading classroom, etc. Well, my dear students, when it comes to lesson planning, actually the lesson objectives should be stated as precisely as possible. Often there is a main objective, and then there are main aim, and then there are objectives. So basically I am talking about two important aspects, aim and objectives. Aim is something that is very, very, I would say, abstract. It is a general idea about the purpose, whereas objectives are the concretization of the same aim. So they are more in number, the objectives can be more in number, and they are measurable as well. For example, in a lesson in which skills are to be integrated, or when a listening or reading text is used to introduce a language item, it is important that the teacher and the students recognize the main aim of the lesson and the objectives that are to be achieved at each stage. The major portion of the time of the lesson should be allocated to the main objective or the main aim. Subsidiary objectives or aims may have a large role in the lesson, but they should not overlap with the main objective. For example, learners will be better able to cope with authentic news broadcasts by participating or by practicing listening skills of XYZ, etc. One of the subsidiary aims for that can be learners develop their discussion skills. So, within one main aim, there can be further sub-aims or objectives. The examples of lesson aims and objectives that are given here would help you understand this further. For example, to help, here if you see, help the students to speak English better, to teach learners to listen. So each time one particular skill here is focused, to develop learners' proficiency in reading again, for example. Whereas the long-term aims of the course can help the teacher to ensure that every particular lesson actually is contributing towards the same main goal, and at the end of the course, ultimately, that main goal is ensured to be achieved. The teacher's point or the teacher's personal aims or objectives can also be a part of this. For example, the teacher can write to talk less myself and involve the students more. Now, this is the personal point of view of the teacher that the teacher may have before starting a lesson. So this can be a part of the lesson plan. Or the teacher may plan to make my instructions clearer, depending upon, the nature of the instructions that the teacher gives. Or the teacher may plan to involve computer software, presenting new structures. So these are the personal points, or these are the personal aims or goals of the teacher that can be a part of the lesson plan. As far as the procedures are concerned, this is a part of the lesson plan which lays out the stages of a lesson which are to be achieved. Teacher should indicate the plan, what will be done at each stage. So these questions are important. What will be done? Why this stage is important? What is the approximate time that would be utilized by the teacher for that stage? What is the nature of the materials? What kind of materials would be used for that particular purpose? Or any further details of, if any, there complex or complicated kind of instructions are involved, then what are those instructions, etc. To do all this, the teacher has to order or to sequence the stages, and various activities and materials are to be jotted down that are going to be used at each stage particularly. While planning activities and tasks for learners, the teacher also has to answer these kind of questions. So when you would look at these questions, you would realize that actually the process of language lesson planning is something very, very complex, very, very tricky as well. So for example, these questions need to be addressed. Number one, for example, how to present or revise a language item through a problem solving activity, through a visual, or through our oral context of dialogue or pictures, etc. So, before the lesson is actually conducted in the class, at the level of lesson planning, these decisions are taken by the teacher and they are documented. The second question that the teacher may need to ask himself or herself is how to develop various skills of the students, which strategies would be used for that, what kind of practice would be given. What do students need before they can listen, read, write, or speak? So, what kind of background information do they need? The teacher would think about that and would arrange for that. How to follow up the skills work? So, what kind of practice is required? The teacher would answer this question and jot it down. And finally, how to check the students' understanding of the lesson and what type of practice activities to set up. Once the lesson is taught, how to give them practice in speaking, in pair work, in writing, in group work, etc. The teacher actually needs to think over a balance of these activities and to think about how to use a variety of activities and materials. I hope, my dear students, that this whole detailed discussion on the nature of the lesson plan that is to be used in a language teaching lesson, and how various skills and how various materials need to be considered and how objectives need to be set, etc. They give you an understanding of how significant a lesson plan is in a language teaching course, and how the planning of a lesson is crucial to the successful process of teaching and learning in a language classroom.